I am very happy to introduce my former student and my friend, Tim Koide. Tim was in the first class that I ever taught at BYU, a history course on modern Japan, just a few years ago. We'll keep it at that. And we've kept in touch since. And I think it was last summer. I was walking my dog. I remember this was a conversation that I had that I when you have a conversation and you remember where you were when you had it, it means it's a meaningful conversation. And I was walking my dog and talking to Tim, I think last summer, about some research that I was doing. And then he began to tell me that he was part of a group starting a minor league baseball team. And I said, and we talked about why he was doing it, and it was about community. And I thought, Tim needs to come talk to my civic engagement students. So I'm really glad that he's here with us from Oakland, California. He asked me to keep my introduction simple. I think he's going to say something about what he's done since leaving BYU, between then and starting this minor league team. So, Tim Koide.
All right. Well, thanks, Aaron. And I was in his class, and I guess it was your first class, and he was actually my capstone advisor for the Asian Studies major, which is ultimately what I graduated in, and I wrote a paper on, it was like the transition of the Showa emperor from head of state to figurehead or some nonsense like that. But I think I found a best-selling book, New York Times best-selling book about the topic, and I didn't plagiarize it, but I basically stole its thesis. But it was a long time ago. Yeah, so I was here at BYU. I entered as a freshman in the year 2000, and I came here thinking I was going to be a photography major, and then I realized you had to apply to the photography program, so I decided not to do photography. And then I thought about film, and I thought about that for a few weeks. And then I took an intro to advertising class, and I thought, oh, advertising seems fun. And so when I came home from my mission, I kept pursuing the advertising thing, but I served in Japan, and I was also taking Japanese courses, and so I was starting to interact with some of these kids who were doing Asian studies as a major. And on an invitation from a friend, I enrolled in a class, modern Chinese history class taught by Michael Murdoch, and fell in love with that class. And so I switched to Asian studies. So I went photography to film to advertising to Asian studies. So pretty linear progression, but that's kind of sets me up for the first part of this discussion, which is kind of what I've been doing since BYU before the baseball team, because my career has been anything but linear. It's been anything but deterministic, and I have two of my old roommates here and one of my best buddies from BYU here, and they can attest to all the ups and downs and random turns my career has taken over the past 20 years or so. But I'll try to go over really quick. I won't bore you with the details, but kind of some of the nuggets of learnings that I've gained in different experiences. But before I do that, anybody here from the Bay Area? Where are you from?
From Walnut Creek.
Oh, that's East Bay. Here.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? No? And I do have to say, one special visitor, other than my wife, who's shyly sitting in the back, Jake Daly, right here. Jake unfortunately pitched for the U, but he was one of our pitchers at the Ballers, and he's back in Utah. His brother Nate pitched for BYU, though, and his little sister is currently a starting pitcher for the softball team here. So big Cougar family, except for Jake. Jake is the black sheep. He's a great pitcher. Okay. So I left BYU with some ambition for the policy world. I spent my last semester at BYU with Verlin sitting in the front here. We were roommates in Washington, D.C., doing the Washington Seminar, which is a great program. It's a lot of fun, good memories. So I spent the first couple of years or so out of BYU kind of in the policy world. And I gotta warn you, there's going to be no semblance of academic rigor to this discussion today at all. It's just going to be an anecdotal walk through memories, and then we'll talk about the ballers. But I throw this picture up here, kind of half in jest. But so this is typical Washington scene, a bunch of eager young policy wonks here, and notice how everybody is dressed except for me. So I'm the doof in a t-shirt and a cardigan and tennis shoes. So I didn't really fit super well in Washington. Just my normal personality is pretty casual. In fact, I interviewed for a job in Washington, D.C. at the end of my time at the Washington Seminar, and the woman interviewing me, halfway through the interview, she said, "You don't want to be here. You want to be back in California." I said, wait, I don't, it was kind of a non sequitur statement, but she was absolutely right. But in Washington, I gained kind of a taste for a desire to be involved in trying to solve problems that mattered, and thinking about, creating a framework internally about solving problems that mattered. Then I went back to Washington after working in San Francisco for a little bit. I went back to Washington for graduate school, still thinking I was going to go down the policy track. I went to a program at the Johns Hopkins University called the School of Advanced International Studies, and while I was there, I started working part-time for a Japanese trading firm called Mitsubishi Corporation, not the car company, not the electronics company. Big trading firm, which is basically just a giant holding company that has holdings in every kind of industrial vertical you can think about. And then I transferred with Mitsubishi once I was done with graduate school back to the Bay Area. I worked in their Silicon Valley office, kind of in a corporate venturing, corporate strategy role, looking at a bunch of different technology categories, and basically we'd scout those emerging technologies, bring them in-house, and run pilots, tests, and then try to commercialize them with our different business units. This kind of sums up my time there. This is on a tour of Google. I used to do a lot of corporate tourism with executives from Japan. They'd come over and they'd want to see the mighty Silicon Valley and see how it worked. And I specifically told these executives, when you come, don't wear suits. We don't wear suits here, so please come casual. They came in their suits. They just took their ties off. And then on the right here, this is more typical of the flavor of working at Mitsubishi, kind of uptight. But this was kind of a fun dinner. The old man sitting down there is a guy by the name of Ryozo Kato. He was a former ambassador to the U.S., and at the time, he was the commissioner of Japanese baseball. So that was a fun conversation. But again, I learned a lot of great things, gained a great global perspective, was exposed to a lot of great industries while I was at Mitsubishi. But again, I didn't fit in very well. Then about that time, this is in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is run by the venture capital industry. And at the time, the first clean tech bubble was collapsing, and so there was all these venture capital firms that were trying to figure out how to retool, remarket these funds that they had raised to invest in clean tech, which is no longer a viable investment category. And so they immediately looked to the adjacency that they thought was closest to it, which was agriculture and food. And so there became this big boom of investment in the agriculture space. And I'm half Japanese Americans from California. We all have roots in ag. My dad actually retired here from BYU. He was a professor of biology, but specifically plant physiology. His research was mainly in agriculture growing up, and so I was kind of exposed to it. So I kind of glommed on to the idea of agriculture. Again, my policy roots, I thought this is a big problem area. This is very fascinating. A lot of excitement here. Jumped in. Started a few companies in the space, landed on this company called Harvestport, which was I won't bore you with the details, but a shared economy marketplace for seasonally used ag assets. It failed. But one of the most exciting things about this endeavor for me was our first investor was a company called Taylor Farms, which if you've ever eaten lettuce out of a bag or a box from the grocery store, you've had their product. They're the largest packer of fresh cut veg in the world. But their headquarters building is in Salinas, California, and from the back window there, our office was on the right-hand side there on the back. You could see John Steinbeck's house, and I thought that was the most exciting thing for me for this starting this company. But one of the key takeaways working in ag was that you had these big global corporations, Taylor Farms, Del Monte, Dole. But the most important thing to the people who worked for these companies were the local communities in which they worked. So if you were a Salinas company, you were hyper-focused on Salinas and the health of Salinas. If you were based in Gonzales, you were hyper-focused on the health of the community in Gonzales. And that really struck me, because these giant, giant corporations, but still super hyper-focused on their local communities. Then I spent some time leading an innovation group at the Coca-Cola Company. And I was focused more on platform technologies, so looking a lot at like supply chain and logistics, distribution, retail technologies, things like that. But as a result, the DNA of the group I worked with was in food science. So I worked a lot with these guys who were kind of the OG flavor scientists and sweetener scientists and stuff like this at Coca-Cola. And at the time, because there's all this was back in the days of 0% interest rates where venture capital was flowing like water. Don't be fooled, and I don't mean to be a cynic, but Silicon Valley was not driven by innovation. It was driven by monetary policy. I was exposed to quite a bit that was happening in the emerging CPG space, so all these emerging brands in food. And one key lesson that has stuck with me since that time was, at the time, everybody was trying to differentiate themselves to get investment capital, right? And so you had all these little brands that had just this litany of functional claims behind their brands so that they could be different, right? Like we've got 50 bajillion grams of protein per serving in this thing, and we've got Ayurvedic additives, and we've got, adaptogens and probiotics and postbiotics and prebiotics and blah, 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 blah. And what you find in industry is that what actually works is usually very, very simple. And in food, it's very, very simple. Basically, there's this inverse relationship between function, this curve, the negative curve here, and flavor, this positive curve here. There's an equilibrium to be had somewhere there, but the more function you put into it, usually the product tasted really bad. And if your product tasted really bad, it usually meant it would go out of business. There's a very clear relationship there. It's not rocket science, but something I learned. So from this, I really gained an appreciation for and a desire to work with products that worked, did what they said, A, and B, were very simple. I found that the best products are very intuitive. They just make sense, and they just work. And at the time in the tech industry, everybody was scrambling to over-engineer the next most differentiated thing. And it was getting kind of nauseating. So I left there, and again, I've fallen backwards into a lot of things I did, but I ended up taking over this little Japanese company that sold Craftsman-made kitchen knives. And here was a product, finally, that I could work with that had this beautiful story behind it. It was very simple. It did what it said it did. These were high-end tools, culinary tools, and people didn't argue with the price because they could tell, the quality just by looking at them. And the story behind them was gorgeous. They marketed themselves. Here's one of our makers, this guy named Yu Kurosaki. Is from a community called Echizen, which is in a prefecture called Fukui, which is kind of on the Sea of Japan side in Japan. And these knife houses, they were previously sword houses. So the stories of these knife makers, they go back 600, 700 years sometimes, and just these beautiful stories. So marketing this product was so easy because it was a simple product. It just did what it said it did. There was no bells and whistles to it. It was just straightforward. The other thing I loved about it was, and Aaron can probably give you a graduate level course on this, but in Japan is one of these nations right now that's suffering from declining population, aging population, declining birth rate, things like this. And so in rural areas are literally collapsing in Japan. One of my favorite Instagram accounts right now is called Cheap Houses Japan. And you can go on there and you find free houses or like $50,000 mansions, and it's great. But this is a result of collapsing asset prices because there's no population to support them. But the thing I loved about this was it was reviving industries in rural areas. it was reviving communities, and it was bringing capital into communities that otherwise wouldn't have it. So after leaving that, I thought, it would be great to have something like that, a product that worked, a product that was simple, that was intuitive, that filled a problem, that was solving a problem, but affected a community that I was more intimately connected with. So here's an old picture. Aaron will appreciate this because it's old. So this chubby guy here, this is my great-grandpa. His name is Toru, and in this picture he was 35. This is taken on the kind of the west side of the Oakland Technical High School. This is in 1921. He had just recently immigrated. He had spent some time cutting sugarcane in Hawaii, trying to make money, and didn't make any money there, and but met my great-grandmother in Hawaii, and then they went back to Japan, they got married, and then he came back to Oakland. But here he is, 35-year-old high school graduate. I think it was mainly a language program. But this just shows you, my family has been in the Oakland-Berkeley area for over 100 years. This is the region in this country that gave my family life. And so this area, even though I actually, my dad spent most of his career as a professor at Penn State University, I spent most of my childhood in State College, Pennsylvania. But the Bay Area, specifically Berkeley, was always home. We always referred to it as home, right? So our spiritual connection is here. So I just show that to you really quick as kind of laying some foundation for the story. But the other cool thing is, again, this is Oakland Technical High School. We call it Oakland Tech. Home of people like Marshawn Lynch and the Pointer Sisters, and Ricky Henderson went to Oakland Tech, very notorious high school in Oakland. Oh, wait, not yet. So I was working on another startup that wasn't getting funded. It wasn't going anywhere, and but I had made this connection through that startup. We were doing a pilot with a local company in Oakland called Oaklandish. It's a fashion manufacturing company there in Oakland. And the owner of that became a good friend, and she had been involved in starting a minor league soccer team in Oakland called the Oakland Roots. And so in the spring, summer of 2023, when John Fisher, who's the owner of the Oakland A's, announced that the Oakland A's would be leaving, and they're going to Las Vegas. They're going to be in Sacramento for the next few years, and then ostensibly go to Las Vegas. I called her up and I said, hey, Angela, you were involved in starting a sports team in Oakland. What does it take to start a professional sports team? Because the A's, obviously the last of the major franchises to leave Oakland. The Warriors left, the Raiders left twice, and now the A's are gone, and the already kind of quivering heart of Oakland is now completely broken. What can we do to start a baseball team? She said, you don't want to start a sports team. It's a pain in the butt, more trouble than it's worth. And we kind of left it at that. I'm like, okay, fine. Then a couple weeks later, she called me back, and she said, you need to meet my new friend, Paul. He's starting a baseball team in Oakland. I said, great. So I met up with him. We met at a Blue Bottle Cafe right across the street from Oakland Tech High School. And after talking for about 5 minutes, he said, so, you want to build a baseball team with me? I said, yeah, absolutely. So almost 100 years later, right across the street from where this picture is taken, I jumped into the Oakland Ballers. So I want to show you a quick video. This is a video we produced for our launch last year. We formally launched in November last year, incorporated the company in September. But this will give you kind of the background if you're not familiar with the background of Oakland and kind of the saga with the A's here.
The ownership has done everything it can to cause division between the team and the fan base.
Just go up and move to Vegas and blame the city of Oakland for all of their problems. It's just lies.
It kind of just feels like a slap in the face.
People are tired, the fans are tired of being battered and bruised.
Oakland is a city that has been counted out since the beginning. We talk about the social relevance, how Oakland represents and always shows up.
Oakland's about culture, it's about hip-hop, it's about resistance. Oakland has so much beautiful history of folks coming together to fight back. The reality is, folks don't know about the spirit of the town.
You know, everyone counts Oakland out, but Oakland is resilient. They think that they own baseball. They think that they own green and gold. Well, we were green and gold before they ever came here.
The Oakland fan base is electric. They have the drums, the signs, the flags, just the best group of people.
And them taking that away from Oakland, it made me say, nah, we gotta have baseball still in our city.
The next chapter for Oakland baseball is going to be a team that's going to care about restoring the legacy of what baseball can mean in the East Bay.
It's the town, baby. Oakland Ballers.
You coming, baby? Oakland Ballers. Ah, okay.
Oakland is ready for a new baseball team. Oakland needs a new baseball team.
We're gonna have baseball here. We're not gonna let anyone else dictate of what we can and can't have here in Oakland.
So what they trying to steal from us, we still have back. Baseball in Oakland, baby. 2024, the battle of the Bay, the real battle, the battle of Oakland. If they want to leave, hey, it's the end of an era. But anytime something ends, something begins.
Low together, high forever. Long as we go together, we'll die whenever. Be a light, couldn't let the darkness try you ever. Truth in my word, you I lie to never.
All right, so that's a little background. The suffice to say, the whole lead up to the A's actually departing, it was call it 10, 15 years of negotiations back and forth between the city and the ownership group, trying to find a new place for the A's to play, build a new stadium. A lot of disingenuous kind of negotiation there, but the people of Oakland were not happy, to the point where anybody baseball fans here, more or less, if you watch any of the A's games over the last, call it 10 years, the Coliseum has basically been empty most of the time, and that's not because the Oakland fans hate the A's or didn't want to go to the games, but that was protest. So they kind of ran the organization into the ground. We joke, we were trying really hard to get Michael Lewis to come out to a game last year, because we are kind of the postscript to, anybody familiar with Moneyball? We're kind of the postscript to Moneyball. I mean, we are the result of, or our genesis is a result of Moneyball being implemented into Major League Baseball. But so we launched, like I said, last November, November 28th, and this is at our launch press conference here. Oh, by the way, we play in the Pioneer League. The Pioneer League, and Jake can tell you all about this. Baseball is a brutal sport. The Pioneer League is one of the major independent leagues in the minor league system. We're not affiliated, meaning all the teams they're independent, right? We're not associated with a major league program. We've become more important because a few years back, the major league draft system went from 40 rounds down to 20 rounds, and so the independent leagues have taken a greater role in kind of becoming these draft leagues, trying to get talent back up to Major League Baseball. But the Pioneer League itself, it's been around since 1939. It used to be affiliated. You guys are too young, but when us old people were here at BYU, there used to be a baseball team in Orem called the Orem Owls. They're now in Colorado, so they're in our league. The Ogden Raptors up in Ogden are in the league. But historically, it's a Mountain West League. So the rest of the teams, other than the two teams in California, which we started, are Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Montana. So this is at our launch press conference. This is the former mayor of Oakland. Being the mayor of Oakland is kind of like being the prime minister of Italy or Japan or something. Just wait a little bit and there'll be somebody different. This is before she was raided by the FBI and before she lost her recall election. But the morning of this, she was still not, her and her staff were still not convinced that they wanted to come, and they were still in negotiations with the A's at the time, and it was a last-minute decision. They decided to come to the press conference, so we had a speech written for her, and in that speech, we wrote, I was here from the beginning, I've been supporting this project from the very beginning, blah, blah. So anyway, the Oakland Ballers became a major piece of her platform during the election cycle. She became one of our closest allies, and in fact, when she got recalled on NPR, they were talking about how her greatest accomplishment was bringing the Oakland Ballers to Oakland. And literally 4 hours before this press conference, her chief of staff was saying, I'm not sure if we're going to make it. So, that's politics. So one of the first things we had to figure out was where we were going to play baseball. So there are a few ideas to start. Bad resolution. But so we launched November 28th. About mid-December, the city of Oakland came back to us and said, hey, there's this park in West Oakland. It's really historic. It was the site of the largest encampment in the state of California just a couple years ago, but we cleared it out. A lot of baseball history, a lot of Oakland history, a lot of California history there. It'd be great if you guys played there. A place called Raimondi Park. It's in a neighborhood called the Prescott, kind of bordering a neighborhood called the Lower Bottoms. Very, very historic district. This used to be called, it was Harlem West back in the day, from the 1930s and 1970s. Everybody kind of rolled through this part of West Oakland. The Black Panthers started just kitty corner to the ballpark. The old rail station, which served the East Bay until 1993, is just across the street. Very historic place. So we went there, we looked at it, and we saw it, even though the park itself at the time was kind of in a shambles. So here's another video. When we announced that we were going to play at Raimondi, we launched this guy.
Raimondi is a baseball park in Oakland. Raimondi Park is Oakland. In 1947, the park was named after World War II hero and local ballplayer Ernie Raimondi. That decade, it was home to some of the first integrated baseball games in America. Long before they became legends, Vada Pinson, Frank Robinson, and Curt Flood perfected their swings playing at Raimondi. For years, it was the best-kept secret in baseball that Raimondi produced more stars than any park in the country. And lately, the park has seen tough times. But like Oakland, Raimondi is resilient, and its best days are still ahead. So come and write the next chapter of baseball in Oakland along with us. The Oakland Ballers are proud to announce that our inaugural season will be played at Raimondi Park. Join us. Let's show the world how we do it in the town.
Yeah, so I like to refer to Raimondi. Anybody basketball fans? So I like to refer to Raimondi as kind of Rucker Park West for baseball. So we mentioned, Frank Robinson, Curt Flood, Vada Pinson, but Rickey Henderson played here, Dave Stewart played here. A lot of Oakland legends grew up playing here. And it really was in bad shape when we got it. The idea was proposed to us in December by the city. We took it up with the Parks and Rec department. It's still a City of Oakland park in January, and then final review in March. We got the environmental review done in like 2 weeks. I've never seen anything move this fast. There were a lot of people, they were literally incumbent council members of the Oakland City Council who were running on a platform of getting Raimondi ready and getting the Ballers in town. So we had a lot of help from the city. And then we finally got the permitting done in April, and we broke ground, redid the sod, and leveled the surface and everything in April. Then we started building these modular stands for the stadium in May, and we played our first game June 4th. And so we built the stadium. Gosh, let's see here. Why is this bad resolution? I don't know. Hold on. Refresh. When in doubt, refresh. There we go. Isn't that the motto at BYU? When in doubt, refresh. Enter to learn, go forth to refresh. So this is what it looked like during the season. So we built it's about 4,200 seat stadium here, and it's the City of Oakland's new baseball team, and it's beautiful. And you can see it's situated literally right across the freeway from the Port of Oakland. Here on the lower half here, our friend Joe owns these buildings here, and there's a few startups housed in there, but now there's a giant food hall that's been put in there. There's new restaurants going in around the corner. So we've seen the whole neighborhood. There's new development going in around. So this whole section of West Oakland, which for years was kind of the place you would go to buy anything or to get stabbed by anything. I mean, it was not a great place, and it's really just over the past year it's changed quite a bit. So in the Pioneer League we play 96 games, 48 home games, 48 away games, And 48 nights in West Oakland, we had one police incident. And so it's a testament to, like, if you bring good energy into a community and a neighborhood, it changes people. People will change, and people will recognize that energy. Here at the Brigham Young University, we call that the spirit. But that's what you're doing. You're bringing love and you're bringing hope into a community, and that's a very real thing. That's more real than this stuff, right? I get a little emotional about it because I remember what this looked like just 2 years ago. It was terrible. It was awful. And still, if you just go, there's Market Street right here. If you just go across Market, it's still awful. But little by little. So this is Raimondi Park. This is where we play. This is where Jake lit him up from the mound. But we also found that Jake had a good bat too, so he got to swing a few times here as well. But it's not a huge stadium. But that's the beauty of minor league baseball. Minor league baseball is all about intimacy. It's all about access. It's all about community. Like we call Raimondi, it's just a hangout. This is just a gathering place for the city of Oakland. And we marketed our games as just celebrations of Oakland. 48 celebrations of Oakland. So, of course, the next thing we had to do is we had to make a team. So the first phone call I made after I talked to Paul at that Blue Bottle Cafe, literally as I'm walking out of the cafe, was to my buddy Don. Don's one of my best buddies, another half Japanese guy. Don Wakamatsu is the local boy, grew up in Hayward, which, if you know, is just south of Oakland. Half Japanese like me. It's a good thing. And first Asian American manager in Major League Baseball. He managed the Seattle Mariners, won a World Series with Kansas City here. He insists that this ump, I can't remember his name, is a good buddy of his. But Don is a great guy, and he's the head of our baseball operations, so he was tasked with kind of putting together the staff. And for us, in building the Ballers, it was important for us that the team itself had a local connection, that they were part of that brand and identity that was local to Oakland there. So here's our skipper, Aaron Miles. Aaron's a good guy, right, Jake? Aaron's a local guy. He's from a town called Brentwood, which is just kind of over the hills, East Bay area. Grew up playing prep there, American Legion ball. Got drafted out of high school, won a World Series with the Cardinals, played for the Dodgers for a little bit, forgive him for that. But he was a great skipper. His family would come to all the games. My favorite was when his mom would come to the games. She would just help herself to the locker room. Bunch of naked boys back there, and she'd go back there and give them pep talks, and it was great. And then bench coach. This is JT Snow. Any Giants fans here? So I actually grew up a Giants fan. My brother was an A's Raiders fan, so I was not allowed to do anything that my older brother did. So by default, I became a 49ers Giants fan. But JT, about the time I entered BYU, actually, JT was one of my favorite baseball players. So he was a first baseman for the Giants in the 90s. 6-time Golden Glove winner. Well-known brand in the Bay Area for sure. So he was our bench coach this season. That's him with our board member, Jorge Leon. I'll get to that in a second. And this is James Harris. James is an Oakland Tech grad, local guy, first-round draft pick out of high school, had some health issues. After playing about 5 years of AAA ball, AA ball, single A ball, all the above. Came back to Oakland, has spent the last 10 years. He has a youth baseball program called the Backyard Boys, which provides baseball coaching and training and clinics for, they target, youth populations that normally don't have access to baseball. Sports, prep sports, as Jake can attest to, in general, are increasingly becoming country club sports, and it's really hard to, that access piece of youth sports is actually a big problem these days. So James is a great guy. He came in as our infield coach, batting coach. I don't know. He can still swing the bat. He's getting a little doughy around the waist, but and then we put together a great team. This is Tyler Lozano's come back this year as our catcher, local guy out of Stockton. Had a great season, made it to the playoffs in year one. Got knocked out by our arch rival up in Davis, but had a great season. Every Sunday game, the team would come out and they would sign autographs. I think is that you at the end, Jake? Blurry? Yeah, there you are. Yeah, there you go. There's Jake. Look at that, throwing 125 from the mound there. Jake's approach was great. He has this little twitch that he does with his hand. Scares the crap out of me when I see it. And then sometimes he has a nice grunt when he releases. And then we had some groundbreakers. This is Kelsey Whitmore. She's the only woman in professional baseball last year, played for us. Great pitcher, great kid. Left us for a little bit. She was on the U.S. national women's baseball team. They're trying to get into the Olympics. But great kid. So we were doing a lot of things that were, you know, on brand for Oakland, and every time Kelsey pitched, the crowd went crazy. Next big thing, conscious of time here, we had to build a brand. So this is Dustin Canalan, a local Oakland guy, lives in New York now. Well-known designer, so we went to him with our identity. This is some of the first kind of mood boards that he put together for our brand. If you notice here, the Oakland Temple is actually the most visited, next to Fisherman's Wharf and the Golden Gate Bridge. It's the most visited place in the Bay Area. So it's on all the Visit Oakland, which is the tourism bureau in Oakland. It's on all their literature and everything. Everybody does their prom photos up at Temple Hill and quinceañera photos, and it's great. But anyway, creating an identity that was really kind of gritty and represented Oakland really well. So in the Bay Area, we call San Francisco the city, right? And Oakland is the town. So we call it the town, so it represents the town really well. And then on the merchandising side, we worked with my friends at Oaklandish. So they do all of our merchandise. They do a great job. Oaklandish is a local company. It's a B corporation. They do things the right way. It's a little more expensive as a result, but super high quality shop, and very high reputation. They do a lot of brands. They do their own brand, and then they kind of white label manufacture for a lot of other brands as well. But this was really important for us. Oakland is the kind of city that really loves to rep itself, and so building a brand that people could wear and that people could rep around. My wife will attest to this. We were standing in line at a restaurant in Salt Lake last year, and I saw a guy in front of me who was wearing an Oaklandish hat. And was I wearing a Ballers hat? I think so, yeah. And he recognized it. It was great. So the brand is getting out there even before we started the season last year. And people are starting to rep the brand on their skin too. So this is a collection of photos of tattoos that people were getting. There's a tattoo parlor in a town called San Leandro that specializes in Ballers tattoos now. So anyway. So our main product with the Ballers is it goes beyond baseball. The baseball product is obviously very, very important. It's what brings people to the yard, but really our product is fan joy. It's giving Oakland a hug. So these photos kind of embody what we do, and Jake can probably attest to this. My wife, who's been to a game, can probably attest to this. But one of the things we really pride ourselves at the ballpark is, first of all, our staff they're first class. And by first class, I mean not necessarily like consummate professionals, but they're just really nice. And when you come to a game, you're greeted with a smile, and people are just very eager to talk to you and say hi and learn your name. The nice thing about Raimondi Park too is, you know, it's small. The players come in through the same gate as the fans, and so there's that constant interaction and access. And so it's kind of like an episode of Cheers. You know, this is where people come. People know their name. You know. And one of the big things for us, a big part of this effort is on the merchandising side and on the sponsorship side, generating as much revenue as possible, because we keep ticket prices really low. One of the taglines we have is it's cheaper than going to a movie with your family. So our general admission tickets are $10. So you can come, get a hot dog, bring the family for under the price of going to a movie. And so that's something that's really important to me. Isn't that nice? Hugs. Hugs. Handshakes. Finger pointing. But our games, like I said before, we market them as celebrations of Oakland. They're just really, really joyful experiences. In Oakland, we don't cheer for the team by name. We cheer for Oakland. So if you had ever been to an A's game at the Coliseum, you'd never hear "Let's go A's." It's always "Let's go Oakland," and that speaks to kind of the kind of the persona, the personality of Oakland. And so we almost every game we had a nonprofit partner. In fact, there are actually more I don't know if this is a good thing. There are more nonprofits per capita in Oakland than any city in the United States. So it's part of the DNA. You know, there's this activist culture and kind of revolutionary culture in Oakland that is still very, very vibrant. So it's very important for us to work with as many community groups as possible. Here's James, one of our coaches, doing his thing with youth baseball. Oakland Symphony, the Unity Council, which is a Latin American organization. This is Dr. Ned Saturu, one of the first Black Panthers, now runs the Black Panther Alumni Legacy Network. The Black Cowboys, Oakland School of the Arts, constantly doing performances. Here's the Oakland 68s, which was one of the Oakland A's fan groups. Now they're ours. Anybody know this guy? Yeah, this is Billy Joe, our buddy Billy. He's one of the owners now, and you know, he's a El Cerrito Pinole guy, lives in Oakland now. He was on tour most of the summer last year, but he would come to the games when he can. He'll be in the park this year a lot. Other performances, a young gun named Jay Walt, local hip hop artist. So it was really important for us, you know, to also lean into kind of the arts and culture side of this part of town and Oakland generally. This is DJ D Sharp. He used to spin for the Hieroglyphics and Lyrics Born, and now he's the Warriors DJ. So that's the evolution. You're cool for a little bit, and then you get a job with the sports team. And then another aspect, you know, we held monthly community meetings leading up to the start of the season last year, and one of the major pieces of feedback from the neighborhood council there in Prescott was, can you limit the number of cars into our neighborhood? We said absolutely. So we partnered with AC Transit, local bus line, partnered with BART. There's a BART station just about a little under a mile away, and we provided a shuttle bus from the BART station to the park. And then Aaron will like this. We had a free bike valet at all the games, and we had different bike groups that created routes from different kind of hot spots around the city and in Berkeley and other parts that they would have these bike caravans that would come to the games together. And so this was really important for us. One cool stat was during the summer, ridership on BART to the West Oakland BART. So the BART is, do you guys know what the BART is? It's our train system in the Bay Area, basically. Ridership to the West Oakland BART station during the summer, during our season, went up about 11%. Ridership on the two lines that service the park went up over 20%. So those were good stats. We liked those. But this was a big deal for us. So we believed in, you know, I think like the slide said, yeah, building with the community, not on the community. So we wanted to minimize our kind of the downside of our being in the neighborhood as much as possible. And then one of the other things that we tried to do that, you know, was the social contract that was broken by the A's and by a lot of professional sports teams is, from the get-go, this idea of fan ownership was a big deal for us. So we structured a crowdfunding round last year, and we had over 2,000 investors. And then from those fan investors, we had an election. So there are other sports teams that have done crowd funds before, but we were the first one to actually have a board member elected from the fan investors that had voting rights in the company. Not like a, you know, make-believe, pretend like they're actually on the board of directors and they have voting rights in the corporation. So that came down to these two finalists. It ended up being Jorge, who you saw before in that picture with JT, who was actually the founder of the Oakland 68s, which was the Oakland A's fan group. But this is a big deal for us. So we want to maintain that connection with the fans. the true value of a sports team is its ability to bring communities together, and the reason why sports teams exist is for the fans. So we wanted to stay true to that. I think that's about all I prepared. But we're off to the races now. Season 2 starts May 20th. So if you guys are ever in, my email is very easy to remember. It's just tim@oaklandballers.com. So if any of you guys are going to be in the Bay Area this summer, just email me and I'll get you tickets. Come and see what we're doing in Oakland. Yeah, so I don't know if there's any questions or anything in the...
Sure, there's questions.
Yeah.
Being in the same league, oh, never mind. Didn't Utah used to have a bees?
Yeah, Salt Lake Bees, so they're an affiliate program. They're an Angels team, and the Bees are great. And their new stadium is going to be awesome. Their old stadium was also awesome. But yeah, the Bees are great, and they had a...
Minor leagues, right?
Yes.
And then, but are they in a different conference than you guys?
So they're, again, they're part of the Anaheim Angels organization. So they're a little higher level of baseball than us. But Jake could probably still play for him if you wanted to. Yeah.
I'm interested to have you say a little bit more about the sort of non-linear path that got you here. I don't know what my question is, other than I want to know.
Yeah.
I guess I want you to be reassuring to students in the room that don't know where they're headed career-wise. And how did you get there, and why? You never expected to be on a baseball team, I guess.
No.
At all, right?
Never.
Is that fair?
Absolutely fair. But now it kind of makes sense. But what I will say, and I guess I can say this because this is BYU, and I really appreciate the opportunity to just be open, because I can't be. My falling backwards into the Ballers, did I mention this before? I'm getting old, so I can't remember. So if I did, just pretend like I didn't. When I was working on that startup that wasn't working, did I mention this?
A little bit.
I was praying about, like, what am I supposed to do next year? Because this is clearly not working. This pitch sucks. We've been rejected by everybody. I mean, I have been rejected by a lot of investors, but this time around it's just getting embarrassing. And I was praying about it. I said, this is clearly not going to work. What am I supposed to do next year? And I'm being a little reductive in the exchange. And the voice of the Spirit came to me very clearly and said, just keep doing this until the next thing happens. The heck does that mean? Well, at the time, I'm developing this relationship with the owner of Oaklandish, right? Which allows me to give her a call when the A's announce that they're going to leave and say, hey, what does it take to start a baseball team? She said, you don't want to do that. And then Paul goes to her because she's the only shop in town to create a brand with. And then she calls me back. Paul's starting a baseball team. And I mean this sincerely, I think the most important thing, because I've tried to, when I got to Silicon Valley, I drank the Kool-Aid from a hose. I mean, I was all about it, and I thought venture capital was going to save the world. I thought it was the coolest thing. And I played that rat race game, and the ward I was in at the time boasted it was the highest tithe-paying ward in the world, and that, all that nonsense. I bought into that kind of more than I should have, and I thought money was going to solve a lot of problems. And what I found, though, is how much money you have and how much money you make is a great metric to tell you how much money you have and how much money you make. And it doesn't really tell you much more than that. My biggest piece of advice, if you're not sure what you're going to, is stay as close as you can to the Lord and try to listen to the voice of the Spirit. You'll be fine. I could never have predicted that I would be working on a baseball team right now. Could never have predicted that. Yeah.
I didn't know the question, but that was the answer I wanted.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That came through many hard learned lessons. But yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I don't really know how baseball works, but
Me neither. It's complicated.
do you think a major league team will ever come back to Oakland?
Maybe. There is
What would it take to do that?
a lot of money. Yeah, a lot of money. And where there's a lot of money is a lot of will. There are family. I mean, one of the investors we have at the Oakland Ballers that I was very excited about is the Haas family. I don't know if you're familiar with the Haas family. They own Levi's, and they used to own the A's, and they were the last great ownership group of the A's. They won all the World Series with the A's, and they really cared about the community. So they're invested in us, and it would take a family like that to really care about the community enough to put up the money. There are a few other people. Joe Lockup, who owns the Warriors, he was trying to buy the A's. There's actually a group in Salt Lake, actually the ownership group of the Bees. I think Salt Lake could support a Major League Baseball program, no problem. It'd be a great market for Major League Baseball. But Oakland, we'll see. It'd be great. I would love it. Yeah, I would love it. Yeah, Scott.
What would it take for like a minor league team like the Ballers to develop into a Major League Baseball team? Money or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's a pretty complicated. I don't think that's what we would want to do. Major League Baseball right now has a lot of problems, but yeah, I'm not sure how that would work, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how that would work. It would have to be a separate entity, I think. Yeah, Paul.
I'm sure that there's much more than you have time to share on this question, but I'm just curious in the sense of community building, and right, you're bringing something new into a community that you've already addressed, particularly in a geographic area, a lot of challenges, a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of people have kind of written it off.
Yeah.
How would you summarize kind of the hardest challenges or most common challenges you faced and bringing something new to a place that doesn't have it already, and this is different than the A's, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you facing? And I'm actually curious because I think this has to do with community and what works in community and how do you convince people, how do you bring people together?
Yeah.
A lot that would have to happen for this to happen.
Yeah, there was a lot, and the last year has been pretty nuts. And we certainly, and Jay can attest to this, we had some controversy over the season. I mean, there were some people trying to destroy us, so to speak. But it took a lot of, you kind of have to be a blank canvas for kind of the community to have their way with to a certain extent. So we've spent a lot of time working with all those community organizations. We spent a lot of time with the City of Oakland, and we spent a lot of time just listening. I think listening is really important in any endeavor, but certainly in a community building endeavor like this. It's tough because you can never take full ownership of anything. I mean, I think that's really important, like make sure that everybody feels that corporate identity with you. So I think that's been, at least that's how we've approached it. We've just spent a lot of time and resources making sure everybody feels like they have a home with the Oakland Ballers and that they themselves feel like Oakland Ballers, and that goes into the brand building aspect as well. I mean, you saw the videos. I mean, we've invested a lot in storytelling. We worked with a great PR firm over the past year. I mean, we've had almost 7,000 earned media stories over the past year. I mean, it's been a lot of effort and resources invested in just trying to tell the story and make sure that story is told the right way and make sure all the stakeholders, nobody's offended. I showed you that picture of Dr. Ned Saturu with there's two Black Panther alumni groups. He has one, there's another one, and they do not like each other. If you talk to one, the other one gets mad, and you talk to this one, the other one gets mad. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that we had to be the bridge of understanding between a lot of people. So it was a lot of listening, and it was a lot of hand-holding, and it was a lot but it's good, right? Because at the end of the day, the end result are, people being able to hug each other again. And so, yeah, I don't know. Does that answer the question a little bit, or I don't know. Yeah. You want to know?
Meeting each other again is a good way to.
It's a good way to end. It's a good way to end.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.